Well, hello everyone. Thanks again for tuning in this week. This is my legislative update for the week of June 24th through the 28th, 2019. The House has a small number of bills this week, but actually a lot of work associated with those. They'll start their work on the appropriations bill. I think it's H.R. 3055. Funding for the Commerce Department, Justice, and EPA, among other agencies, for the 2020 budget. They'll also work on an emergency funding bill, which is 3401, and that is for emergency funding for border operations. Both the House and the Senate will be looking at that this week, and I expect we'll see a lot of discussion of that in the news and some controversy, both between the parties and within the parties themselves. So I'll look for that in the news. There's also one bill that'll be passed likely by a voice vote, which for me as a veteran is important. It's H.R. 2109. What that bill will do is provide some guidance to the Veterans Administration when they let contracts for the VA and award those contracts. They'll be able to single out and award contracts to contractors who employ veterans. As I said, the Senate will also work on the emergency funding bill, their version of it. I don't know if the reconciliation between the House and the Senate versions of that southern border funding will happen this week, but both chambers will be working on that. And the Senate will also be working on the 2020 defense budget, which looks like it's coming in at about $750 billion. So I suspect we'll hear some of that in the news as well. There are over 60 hearings this week between the two chambers, and I thought I would highlight three of those, which I found interesting. The House Judiciary Committee at 10:15 on Wednesday will be voting on a resolution to subpoena Kellyanne Conway, the counselor to the president, and they want her to testify about her suspected Hatch Act violations, and we heard some of that in the news last week, so the House is moving. And I think they're actually meeting a little bit before that at 10 o'clock on Wednesday just to talk in general about other Hatch Act violations by the Trump administration and looking again at a subpoena for Kellyanne Conway. The Senate Homeland Security Committee at 9:30 on Wednesday will be looking at ideas for dealing with the migration situation at the southern border. As we heard over the weekend, the president has delayed implementation of deportations, asking Congress, and in his mind, the Democrats, to work on some solutions for the asylum process on our southern border. And also the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee will be looking at election security. Obviously, we've heard a lot about that in the news, and so at least that committee is looking at some ideas of what we can do with, obviously, the 2020 election coming up. As I said, there were over 60 hearings, and so if you go to congress.gov, basically in the middle of the page, you'll find a link to the committee schedule, and you can look at the various hearings by day at that location. So that's a brief summary of what's happening this week in Congress. I hope you get a chance to dialogue with your member of Congress or his or her staff. My representative is be involved in 4 committee hearings that I didn't highlight here, but I'll be talking to her staff about those throughout the week. So we'll see what goes on this week, and we will touch base when the House comes in session after their July 4th recess. If I don't talk to you then, have a great 4th of July, and we'll talk to you after.